Hi everyone, here we're going to have a discussion about the density lab. So here we're looking at 4 different materials and they all have the same mass but different sizes increasing from left to right. So before we continue, let's get an idea what mass is. So here you're looking at a carbon atom, for example, like made of wood. Wood is made of mostly carbon. And so carbon has, just in considering the number of protons, carbon has 6 protons in its nucleus. Whereas if you look at iron, iron has 26 protons in its nucleus. And iron is usually heavier than wood. And effectively the reason why is what your mass is determined by the number of protons. So the more protons are in an object has in its an atom has in its nucleus, the more massive it's going to be. So that's the essence of what mass is. It's the number of protons there are. So here then you have these 4 sets of materials. They all have the same mass. So in a way they all have the same numbers of protons inside of them. But if you look at them, they have different sizes. So the first one, well, let's go ahead and just take a look at the experiment, see what happens. So if we put the first one into the water, that one sinks. Put the second one into the water, that one also sinks. Put the third, that one floats. And put the fourth in, that one floats. So why is that? How is it possible that even though these objects all have the same mass, 2 of them sink and 2 of them float? So each of them, all of them have the same numbers of protons inside of them, the same amount of stuff, but in this case here, because of volumes are different, the atoms are spread out over a bigger volume. Let's look at the other case. So now let's say that we have these materials. So now they all have the same size, but they have different masses. So this means the red one here is 2 kilograms. It has a smaller mass, so less protons. All the way to the right here, this one has 8 kilograms, so it has more protons. So let's see which one floats and which one sinks. So this one floats. This one also floats. This one sinks. And this one sinks. So what this tells you here is, even though in this case they all have the same mass, they all have the same volume, but the one that floats, it has less atoms inside of it, or a smaller mass, and the one that sinks has more atoms inside of it, or a greater mass. So the main idea behind today's lab then is to look at this comparison, where if you change an object's for the same amount of mass, objects that take up more space will float, and for the same volume, objects that have less mass will float. So density then is a comparison of 2 things: the amount of mass that an object has, or the amount of stuff inside of it, and the amount of volume that the object takes up. So now let's take a look at this one here. So now all these objects have the same density, so let's see what happens. So in this case, they all float. So density then, it's a comparison of the amount of atoms that are inside. So the amount of atoms that are inside, then the amount of stuff that the amount of stuff that's inside of you, the numbers of protons, or the amount of mass. So it compares that to how that stuff is spread out in the volume. So let's take a look at this picture to see what I mean here. So here you have an object that has a low density and an object that has a high density. So in this case, both boxes have the same volume, but in the first case, the object that has a low density, there's less stuff in here, so the stuff is more spread out. And the object that has a high density, there's more stuff, there's more atoms in there, so the mass is more concentrated, so it's going to be heavier.